My name is Alex, and for 5 years, I was the ghost in the machine at a mid-level tech firm called Innovate Dynamics. I was a senior programmer, the guy they called when the servers were on fire or when a client had an impossible technical problem. I was good at my job, brilliant even, but I was quiet. I was an introvert in a company culture that valued loud talkers over hard workers. And in that kind of environment, a shark will always rise to the top. Our shark was Marcus. Marcus was a senior sales executive, a man who could sell ice in the Arctic. He had perfectly coiffed hair, a dazzling white smile, and the kind of handshake that made you feel like you were his best friend, even as he was picking your pocket. He knew just enough technical jargon to sound impressive to clients, but in reality, he couldn't tell the difference between Java and JavaScript. His real talent was identifying other people's good ideas and presenting them as his own. And his eyes had been on me for a while. The story begins on a Tuesday morning when he called me into his glass-walled office. He was practically vibrating with excitement. "Alex, my man," he boomed, gesturing for me to sit. "Close the door. I'm about to change your life." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "You've heard of Global Corp, right? The logistics giant?" I nodded. They were the Moby Dick of potential clients, a company we were far too small to ever land. "Well," Marcus said, steepling his fingers, "I've got an in. A big one. But they have a problem. A massive, complex logistics problem that off-the-shelf software can't solve. They need a custom solution, something bespoke, something genius." He paused for dramatic effect. "And that, my friend, is where you come in. I need you to build it from the ground up. I'm talking a revolutionary, AI-driven logistics management system. You do this, Alex. You deliver this for me. And I'm not just talking about a pat on the back. I have been authorized to offer you the deal of a lifetime, a promotion to the new Director of Technology position, a 6-figure bonus, a share of the profits from the contract. We're talking life-changing money, Alex. You and me. We're going to the top." I should have been skeptical. I'd heard whispers of Marcus's empty promises to other colleagues, but this felt different. The scale was immense. The promises were specific, and a part of me, the quiet, overlooked programmer part of me, was hungry for the recognition. The challenge of the project itself was intoxicating. "I can do it," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Good," Marcus beamed, his smile as wide and predatory as a shark's. "I knew I could count on you." For the next 4 months, my life ceased to exist outside of that project. I lived on a diet of stale pizza, vending machine coffee, and pure code. I worked 16-hour days. I spent my weekends in the empty, silent office, the rhythmic click-clack of my keyboard the only sound. I poured everything I had into the software. It became my masterpiece. It wasn't just a logistics program. It was a work of art, with a predictive AI engine so sophisticated it could anticipate supply chain issues weeks in advance. Marcus was a constant presence, but not a helpful one. He would pop his head into my office, full of praise and encouragement. "You're a rock star, Alex. A genius." But he offered no real support. When I requested a junior programmer to help with the database integration, he told me the budget was too tight. When I asked to be included in the client meetings to better understand their needs, he would wave his hand dismissively. No, you just focus on the genius stuff," he'd say. "Let me handle the boring corporate politics. I'm protecting you from all that noise so you can create." I now know he wasn't protecting me. He was isolating me. He was making sure that to the client and to our own executive board, this project had only one face, his. The seed of doubt was planted about 3 months into the project. I was working late, as usual, and I walked past Marcus's office on my way to the kitchen. He was on the phone with someone from the executive board, his back to the door. His voice was low, but I heard a single chilling sentence that stopped me in my tracks. "Don't worry," Marcus said into the phone. "The tech guy is just a code monkey. He's completely in the dark about the true scale of this contract. He thinks he's getting a promotion." He chuckled. "He's easy to manage." I stood frozen in the hallway, the blood turning to ice in my veins. A code monkey. Easy to manage. In that moment, the entire ugly picture became crystal clear. The isolation, the empty promises, the feigned friendship. It was all a lie. He was never going to give me the promotion or the bonus. He was going to take my work, claim it as his own, and throw me away like an empty coffee cup. The rage I felt was cold and sharp, but I didn't quit. I didn't confront him. A part of me, the logical, problem-solving programmer part, took over. He wanted to play a game? Fine, but I was the one who designed the board. That night, I went home and I built my insurance policy. Deep within the millions of lines of code I had written, I created a ghost. It was a small, elegant, and brutally effective piece of programming. First, I drafted a simple 1-year software license agreement. I embedded it into the digital terms of service for the software's installation package, adding it to the dozens of pages of legal boilerplate. I knew Marcus would just scroll to the bottom and click, "I agree," without reading a single word. It was a digital contract, and he was about to sign it. Second, I built the time bomb. I created a subroutine that on the surface looked like a simple, benign date stamp function used for logging. But hidden within it, obfuscated and encrypted, was a logic bomb. The code was programmed with a simple, deadly directive. On every boot up, it would check the system date. If the date was exactly 365 days past the initial installation date, and a specific 256-character license key was not present in the system's registry, it would execute a catastrophic sequence. Phase 1 would corrupt every byte of data the software had generated and stored over the past year, turning it all into irreversible digital garbage. Phase 2, 10 minutes later, would permanently delete the core executable of the program itself. It would be a digital apocalypse. Finally, I generated the one and only license key, the key that could stop the bomb. I saved it onto a single, heavily encrypted USB drive, a small, unassuming piece of black plastic that was now the most valuable object in my world. My work was done. I had built Marcus his golden chariot, but I had also secretly chained a stick of dynamite to its axle with a 1-year fuse. A month later, I delivered the finished software. Marcus was ecstatic. "You did it, Alex. You're a miracle worker," he gushed. He presented the software to the Global Corp executives in a grand meeting to which I was, of course, not invited. I heard later that he was brilliant, that he spoke about the AI engine and the predictive algorithms as if he had written them himself. The client was blown away. They signed the contract a week later. It was the biggest deal in our company's history, worth tens of millions of dollars. As promised, Marcus was immediately promoted to Vice President of Strategy and Innovation. He got a corner office, a massive pay raise, and a bonus that I'm sure was, as he promised, life-changing money. I waited. A week went by, then 2. I heard nothing about my own promotion, nothing about my bonus. My emails to Marcus went unanswered. I was a ghost again, a tool that was no longer needed. Finally, at the end of the month, his new assistant called and summoned me to his new palatial VP office. I walked in, and he was sitting behind a desk the size of a small car, looking out at the city skyline. He didn't smile. The charming, friendly Marcus was gone. In his place was a cold, distant executive. "Alex," he said, not even turning to look at me. "Thank you for coming in." He swiveled his chair around. As you know, the company is moving in a bold, new direction. We're restructuring to be more agile, more dynamic. He talked for 5 minutes, using every corporate buzzword in the book. He never once mentioned the Global Corp project. Finally, he got to the point. And unfortunately, as part of this restructuring, your role has been made redundant. While your technical skills are adequate, your recent performance has shown a lack of collaborative spirit. You're not really a team player, Alex, and we need team players. I just stared at him, a numb, cold calm spreading through me. He had taken my work, my masterpiece, and was now using a twisted version of the isolation he had imposed on me as the very reason for firing me. It was so perfectly, diabolically cruel. So that's it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. That's it, he confirmed, already looking at his computer screen, dismissing me. Security will escort you out. Please have your personal belongings packed. An hour later, I was walking out of the front door of the building for the last time. A security guard walked beside me, carrying the small cardboard box that contained my life for the past 5 years. I saw my former colleagues at their desks, their heads down, refusing to meet my eyes. They knew it was wrong, but they were too scared to say anything. I got into my car in the parking garage. I sat there for a long moment, the box of my belongings, on the passenger seat. Then I reached into my pocket and took out the small black USB drive. I looked at the gleaming glass tower of Innovate Dynamics, at the corner office on the top floor, where Marcus was probably celebrating his victory. And a slow, cold, patient smile spread across my face. He had won the battle, but I was going to win the war. He just didn't know it yet. I started the car and drove away, not looking back. The clock was ticking. 365 days to go. The year that followed was a study in contrasts, a perfect split screen of two diverging realities. On one side of the screen was Marcus, ascending to the heavens of the corporate world. He became the golden boy of Innovate Dynamics. His face was on the cover of tech magazines, hailing him as a visionary who had single-handedly transformed the company's fortunes. He gave keynote speeches at industry conferences, confidently explaining the architecture of his software, using phrases and concepts he had lifted directly from my design documents. He bought a new house in the wealthiest part of the city, a glass and steel monstrosity with an infinity pool. He drove a new German sports car. His success was loud, flashy, and built on the most rotten of foundations. On the other side of the screen was me. My journey was quieter, harder. The performance issues narrative that Marcus had invented followed me like a ghost. I was rejected from the first few jobs I applied for, with recruiters hinting that they had heard I wasn't a team player. It was a bitter, frustrating pill to swallow, but I didn't let it break me. I took my meager savings, rented a tiny, windowless office in a shared workspace building, and started my own one-man consulting firm, Phoenix Code. The name was a private joke, a promise to myself. I would rise from the ashes he had left me in. I worked, harder than I ever had before. I took on small, thankless jobs that bigger firms wouldn't touch. I debugged buggy code for startups. I built small database solutions for local businesses. I didn't have Marcus's charm, so I built my reputation on the only thing I had, pure, undeniable skill. My work was clean, efficient, and always delivered on time. Slowly, word began to spread. The small clients led to bigger clients. The tiny office was replaced by a slightly larger one with a window. By the end of the year, I had a small team of brilliant young programmers working for me. We weren't flashy. We weren't famous, but we were respected. We were profitable. And every line of code we wrote was our own. Throughout that year, I never once checked in on Innovate Dynamics. I never looked at their stock price. I never asked old colleagues how things were going. I simply wound the clock of my new life forward and waited. I had built the bomb, set the timer, and walked away. I had to trust my own work. And then the day arrived, the 365th day, the anniversary of my humiliation. I walked into my own beautiful, sunlit office that morning. My team greeted me with cheerful good mornings. The whiteboard was filled with the architecture for our exciting new project. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at my desk. I looked at the calendar on my computer screen. October 28th. I didn't feel a surge of vengeful glee. I just felt a quiet, calm sense of finality. A ledger was about to be balanced. At 9 a.m., the exact time Marcus had called me into his office to fire me a year ago, I took a slow sip of my coffee. And I knew, across town, the apocalypse was beginning. The first sign of trouble at Innovate Dynamics was a single frantic email from the Global Corp account manager. The subject line was just a string of capital letters and exclamation points. System down. The email was followed by a flood of others. The software wasn't just down. It was behaving erratically, violently. Data on thousands of real-time shipments was being replaced with strings of nonsensical characters. Automated delivery drones were being rerouted to the middle of the ocean. The entire, intricate dance of global logistics that my software conducted had devolved into pure, unadulterated chaos. In his corner office, Marcus was screaming into his phone at his head of IT. What do you mean you can't figure it out? Just reboot the servers. But rebooting did nothing. In fact, it seemed to make things worse. On every reboot, another chunk of the historical data became corrupted, turning years of valuable business intelligence into digital sludge. Global Corp was losing millions of dollars with every passing minute. Their own CEO was on the phone with Marcus, his voice a low, murderous roar. The pressure on Marcus was immense, the fate of his career and the company hanging by a single fraying thread. At 9:10 a.m., exactly as I had programmed, Phase 2 of the time bomb executed. The core program, my masterpiece, located its own executable file and permanently deleted itself. It was the digital equivalent of a suicide mission. The software didn't just stop working. It ceased to exist. The IT team at Innovate Dynamics was in a state of sheer panic. They were staring at an empty folder. Their backups were useless, as they only backed up the corrupted data, not the now vanished source code. They were trying to restore a ghost. It was a junior IT technician, a young woman who had been an intern when I was there, who finally found the clue. In a desperate search, she found the original installation package I had created a year ago. And she did something no one else, least of all Marcus, had ever bothered to do. She read the fine print. She read the terms of service. And there, buried in page 47 of the legal text, she found it. The 1-year license agreement, and the clause that stated the software required a renewal key to continue functioning past its expiration date. She brought it to Marcus. I can only imagine the look on his face as he read that clause, the dawning horror, the sudden, sickening realization that this wasn't a random bug or a cyber attack. This was a feature, a deliberate, perfectly executed act of sabotage. And there was only one person on the planet who held the key. My phone rang at 11:30 a.m. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was. I let it ring 4 times before answering, my voice calm and professional. Alex speaking. The voice on the other end was a ragged, desperate bark. Alex, it's Marcus. You have to help us. The Global Corp system, it's gone. I'm sorry. To hear that, Marcus, I said, my tone devoid of any emotion. That sounds like a serious problem. Don't play dumb with me. You son of a... He started to scream, but then caught himself, the desperation overwhelming his anger. Please, Alex, please. I know what this is. The license. We'll pay. Just tell us what you want. What I want, I said, leaning back in my chair, is a professional consultation. As it happens, my firm, Phoenix Code, specializes in emergency, data recovery, and enterprise software solutions. We can schedule a video conference for this afternoon. I'll have my assistant send you our standard consulting agreement and fee structure. I hung up before he could respond. The video conference that afternoon was the most satisfying moment of my professional life. Marcus was on the screen, his hair a mess, his face pale and sweaty. He was joined by the CEO of Innovate Dynamics. They looked like men attending their own execution. I was calm, composed, in complete control. Gentlemen, I began, it seems you have a problem. A rather significant one. Marcus found a sliver of his old arrogance. Cut the crap, Alex. What's your price? Just name it. We'll pay it. Just fix this. There is no fixing it, Marcus, I said, my voice cold and precise. The original software is gone, as per the terms of the expired license. What you require is a new installation of the software, a full data recovery from the corrupted archives, and of course, a new perpetual license for its use. This is a significant undertaking. I put a proposal up on the screen. It was beautiful in its brutal simplicity. First, I said, the emergency perpetual license fee, a one-time payment. I believe the original bonus we discussed for this project was in the neighborhood of $200,000. Adjusted for 1 year of inflation and adding a significant emergency activation premium, the new license fee is $500,000. The CEO flinched. Marcus went pale. I continued. Second, the data recovery and reinstallation project. My firm's fee for a project of this complexity is a flat $1 million, payable in advance. I let the number hang in the air. And finally, I said, moving to the last, most important point, there is the matter of my professional reputation. Innovate Dynamics will issue a formal public press release. This release will be sent to every major industry publication and all of your current clients. It will state unequivocally that the Global Corp software system was solely and exclusively designed, coded, and developed by me, Alex Chun. It will also contain a full and public apology from you, Marcus personally, for the mischaracterization of the reasons for my termination 1 year ago, clarifying that I left the company in good standing. This is non-negotiable. They stared at my proposal on the screen, utterly defeated. They had no choice. Every minute they delayed, Global Corp was losing more money and threatening a lawsuit that would bankrupt the company. They were trapped. They had built their house on my work, and I had just repossessed the land it was built on. You agree to my terms? I asked into the silence. Marcus, a broken man, just nodded, unable to speak. We agree, the CEO said, his voice a grim whisper. The next day, the press release went out. My phone began ringing off the hook with offers from new clients, from investors, from reporters. The story of the time bomb in the code became a quiet legend in the tech industry. The wire transfer for $1.5 million hit my company's bank account that afternoon. I paid my team a massive, well-deserved bonus. That evening, I sat alone in my office. I took the small, black USB drive from my desk drawer, my insurance policy, the key to my revenge. I dropped it into a small metal wastebasket, lit a match, and watched the plastic curl and melt into an unrecognizable lump. The ledger was balanced. The debt had been paid. My work was done.